let's now get some more insight into the situation on the ground right now in Ghana. Nabil Ahmed Rufai joins us in Accra. Nabil, always good to have you on the show with us. Now, let's start off with what happened to that deal that was reached in principle back in January, where they looked to restructure about $5.4 billion of debt. Is it clear what exactly the roadblocks are currently to the government striking a deal with, of course, those holders of international bonds?
Well, Uche, what we are learning is that beyond the deal that was agreed in principle in January with the creditors, there was a need for a memorandum of understanding to be signed with the official creditor committee. But first, the government of Ghana was supposed to have signed a deal with the individual creditors first, agreeing to the terms of the debt restructuring. But that has not really been finalized, which is why we find ourselves in this particular situation at the moment. So that's the roadblock, or that's the hurdle that the government had to really jump beyond the deal that was signed in principle. But now we're also learning that some bondholders have not really been pleased with some of the terms that were agreed, that were proposed by Ghana's government in the debt restructuring process, and they would want it to be reviewed. Uche.
Now, a lot of people seem to have problems with the current deal because the IMF is also lending its voice. It says it is advising against the deal because it would lead to breaches to the debt sustainable thresholds in the country. This weekend, we did see the IMF give sort of the green light for the bailout of Ghana, the $3 billion bailout to continue. So what do you make of what the IMF is saying, and where are talks with the IMF right now?
Well, indeed, Uche, the IMF said, of course, when it said it had reached a staff-level agreement for the third tranche of the bailout to be released, which is $360 million. But that was on condition that Ghana's government would have gotten a deal with its bilateral and commercial creditors. And also that deal with the creditors should also make sure that the country's debt was going to be sustainable. But now that has really hit a dead end because we are not getting a deal with the external creditors, which also means that it's going to be very difficult for the IMF board and its management to really approve the release of the $360 million, which is the third tranche of the $3 billion IMF bailout. So Ghana finds itself in a very tight corner. But then just a while ago, the finance minister, Adam, says this is just a little snag, and they would go back to the drawing table to try and see how best they can adjust their figures so they'll be able to make the country's debt sustainable in order to get the $360 million from the IMF.
Well, Nabil, I wonder how optimistic analysts feel about this, because the former finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, he was replaced just about a month or so ago. Give us an update on the current finance minister, who was his former deputy, Mohamed Amin Adam. Any significant changes we've seen in terms of his strategy?
Well, now that this process has hit a snag, this is where the new finance minister, Adam, would have to prove his worth as to how he would want to work towards jumping this hurdle that the country finds itself in. So this is a very big test on his leadership and his, skill in handling such issues. For now, all he's been doing is to just fall back on what has already been done by the previous finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, up until this point. So now that all that has been tabled down has not really been successful, then the new finance minister, Adam, would have to now go back to the drawing table to try and adjust the figures and do all he can so that Ghana can get the rest of the IMF bailout, which is a $360 million. So it's really going to be a test case for him to prove his worth, Uche.